Hey, y'all. I want to take a few minutes to explain some important aspects about the Vietnam War. The first is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. So, President Johnson was in office after Kennedy was assassinated. President Johnson really did not want to be the first president to lose a war. The Vietnam War had not been declared yet, but American troops were being sent over to fight in Vietnam. In order to get a declaration of war, the Senate, Congress has to vote on it. Um, Three-fifths of Congress, the House of Representatives, and the senators, three-fifths of them have to vote in favor of a declaration of war. The Constitution says that a president cannot send American troops overseas to fight without a declaration of war. Um, all the presidents during the Cold War were afraid of losing certain countries to communism. So when China became communist in 1949, it was blamed on President Truman, and his approval rating plummeted. So Johnson did not want to lose another country to communism while he was in office because he would be blamed for that. So in order to get to find a way to send American troops overseas to fight, President Johnson fabricated an event known as the Gulf of Tonkin attack. There was some confusion, and there still is actually, about what really happened. But Johnson came on live TV and told Americans that American patrol boats had been attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is part of Vietnam. And so as a result, he was asking Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution so they passed it. Only two members of Congress voted against it. And this Gulf of Tonkin resolution, when Congress voted in favor of it, they were voting in favor of giving President Johnson the complete authority to do whatever was necessary to protect our interests in Vietnam, whatever was necessary. And see, this is the problem. Congress gave him that authority, and so Congress basically gave up their decision-making power about going to war. They gave that up to President Johnson. Now it was all in his hands. So this was a mistake, of course. But the real problem is that the Gulf of Tonkin attack really didn't happen. They fabricated an event. There's a lot of confusion about this, but the sailors who were on that boat, after they radio in to the White House and told them about the attack, a couple days later, they kind of took it back and they said, oh, it was actually just bad weather. We're not sure if we were attacked. But Johnson just wanted to go with the story that we were attacked. And this allowed the United States to enter the war completely without declaring a war. So that's why there's no start date to the Vietnam War. It just kind of happened gradually. The major problem, again, about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was that the Gulf of Tonkin attack was that it was a lie. And how do we know this? Well, in 1971, there was a guy named Daniel Ellsberg. He had worked for the Pentagon for a number of years, and he had been put in charge of writing a top secret document called A History of America's Involvement in Vietnam. So he worked for years on that, and it was top secret. And then by 1971, most of the country had turned against the war. They no longer supported it. And Daniel Ellsberg was one of those people. He wanted the war to stop. And so he wrote this top secret document that tells all the lies that our leaders told us. And he decided to give it to the New York Times. He gave them a copy of the document. It's called the Pentagon Papers. And the New York Times started publishing it a little bit each day. So readers would read, a couple of pages one day and then read the next pages a few days later. The Pentagon Papers showed so many lies. First of all, in the Pentagon Papers, it stated that President Johnson wrote the Gulf of Tonkin resolution 6 weeks before the alleged attack. So, that's problematic because basically he's already saying that this happened when it hadn't happened, because he just, no matter if it happened or not, he wanted to tell Americans that we were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin so that Congress would give him complete authority to go to war without a formal declaration of war. So before 1971, a lot of people had suspected that he wasn't telling the truth about what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin. But when the Pentagon Papers were released to the New York Times, Americans were like, I knew it. I knew he, I knew we'd been fed lies the whole time. For one, that attack was fabricated. And secondly, the Pentagon Papers showed that none of the presidents during the Vietnam conflict, none of them thought that the US could win this war. So American involvement in Vietnam started right after World War II ended. So you basically had President Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and then Nixon became president after 1971. So he wasn't included in the Pentagon Papers, but he was still president. I mean, he was president while the Vietnam War was still going on. But all the other presidents, in the Pentagon Papers, it talked about how they lied constantly. They knew the war couldn't be won, yet they kept sending American troops over there to kill and be killed. So, of course, the American public was really angry about this. The draft had been horrible for so many young American men. And to hear that it was all sort of, they never thought we could win. So why do you keep sending people there? The reason they kept sending people and escalating the war was that because they wanted to keep it going as long as they were president. They didn't want to lose the war. So Johnson was thinking, I know we can't win this war, but I don't want to lose while I'm in office. So he just kind of held out, kept sending American troops there in a way to to delay the American defeat. He wanted to delay the defeat so that it would happen under a different president. So knowing that it couldn't be won and yet escalating it, that was a real problem, as you can imagine. The parents and loved ones of the troops who had been sent there, they were outraged. Veterans who came back paralyzed and addicted to heroin, they were outraged. They were sent there for a cause that our leaders knew they could not win. So that's a really important part to understand. The Pentagon Papers changed everything. And Daniel Ellsberg, some people thought he was a hero for exposing the lies, and some people thought he was a traitor for releasing top secret documents. So I want to know what you think. What's your opinion?